Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Bad Paramahansa Purujika Acharya Ashtottara Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila HG Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purujika Acharya Ashtottara Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 22nd day of February 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Let me say that again, sorry. On this 22nd day of February 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're in chapter 2 entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. Text number 23 at the bottom of page 90. Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani Nayanam Dahati Pavakaha Nachayanam Klediyantyapo Nashoshiyati Marutaha Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani Nayanam Dahati Pavakaha Nachayanam Klediyantyapo Nashoshiyati Marutaha Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani Nayanam Dahati Pavakaha Nachayanam Klediyantyapo Nashoshiyati Marutaha Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani Nayanam Dahati Pavakaha Nachayanam Klediyantyapo Nashoshiyati Marutaha Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani Nayanam Dahati Pavakaha Nachayanam Klediyantyapo Nashoshiyati Marutaha Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani Nayanam Dahati Pavakaha Nachayanam Klediyantyapo Nashoshiyati Marutaha. Tapas, you want to try? Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani Nayanam Dahati Pavakaha Nachayanam Klediyantyapo Nashoshiyati Marutaha. Anyone in Zoom land?
Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani
Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani
Nayanam Dahati Pavakaha
Nayanam Dahati Pavakaha
Nachayanam Kledayanti Apo
Nachayanam Klediyantyapo
Na Shoshayati Marutaha.
Nashoshiyati Marutaha. Okay, take this. Take this. Okay, thank you for that. Na, never. Enam, this soul. Chindanti, can cut to pieces. Shastrani, weapons. Na, never. Enam, this soul. Dahati, burns. Pavakaha, fire. Na, never. Cha, also. Enam, this soul. Klediyanti, moistens. Apaha, water. Na, never. Shoshiyati, dries. Marutaha, wind. Translation, Krishna says to Arjuna, the soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Purport. All kinds of weapons, swords, flame weapons, rain weapons, tornado weapons, etc., are unable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kinds of weapons made of earth, water, air, ether, etc., in addition to the modern weapons of fire. Even the nuclear weapons of the modern age are classified as fire weapons. But formerly, there were other weapons made of all different types of material elements. Fire weapons were counteracted by water weapons, which are now unknown to modern science. Nor do modern scientists have knowledge of tornado weapons. Nonetheless, the soul can never be cut into pieces, nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. The Mayavadi cannot explain how the individual soul came into existence simply by ignorance, and consequently became covered by the illusory energy. Nor was it ever possible to cut the individual souls from the original Supreme Soul. Rather, the individual souls are eternally separated parts of the Supreme Soul. Because they are atomic individual souls eternally, Sanatan, they are prone to be covered by the illusory energy, and thus they become separated from the association of the Supreme Lord, just as the sparks of a fire, although one in quality with the fire, are prone to be extinguished when out of the fire. In the Varaha Purana, the living entities are described as separated parts and parcels of the Supreme. They are eternally so, according to the Bhagavad Gita also. So even after being liberated from illusion, the living entity remains a separate identity, as is evident from the teachings of the Lord to Arjuna. Arjuna became liberated by the knowledge received from Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all the members of the Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. Bottom of page 90. So, Krishna is continuing to describe the indestructibility of the soul. Text 22, he described how the soul takes off the old bodies, just like old clothes, and puts on a new set. And this has been going on since time immemorial. In text 20, again, this is the key verse of the whole chapter, Najayate mriyate vakadachan, for the soul there is never birth nor death at any time. It has not come into being, does not come into being, will not come into being, and he is unborn, eternal, ever existing in primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. And this text 23 is just reiterating that. All of these, as Prabhupada points out, these are different kinds of weapons, ways in which the body can be destroyed. But this word nainam means, ainam means the soul. So this soul cannot be cut in any way, cannot be burned, cannot be drowned, cannot be dried up. Which is very encouraging, because that's who we really are. So in one sense, we understand we will never die. The problem is that the process of dying in the conditioned state is extremely painful, because you think I'm dying, and you're very much attuned to the pains of the material body. And a lot of the pain is just the agony of the not knowing what's going to happen, the distress, the being separated from all the things that you treasured and loved. It's agonizing. So, but when one has practiced Krishna consciousness and is truly detached, because you're attached to Krishna, your mind is focused completely on Krishna, then the leaving of the body is not so traumatic. And we've seen that recently. Many of you remember, I don't know if you were here at the time, Shyamali. She was Yamuna Pati's daughter, actually also Parashakti. And very beloved of the whole community, and she was married with one of our main devotees who came out of the previous era, Bhishma Dev, very nice devotee. And they were living in Gainesville. Every time I went to Alatra, I would visit them. She would cook lunch for me, like that. And then she came down with this cancer, and it was traumatic. But she had, her father went there, her mother went there, spent a lot of time with her. She had a whole bunch of friends. Her guru, Indrajumna Maharaj, was in Vrindavan, but he was spending hours with her on Zoom and encouraging her. I called up and chanted some verses. And Yamuna, there was a description, she left. It was just like, pick me up, like the airplane was coming to pick her up. She wasn't in any anxiety. Well, I worked in a hospital, and I saw many people die, and it's the most traumatic thing just to see it. So much anxiety, and they put them on the drugs, and so you're really not conscious, which is the worst thing. So it's that's the final exam. That's when it's good. This is what we're all working toward. Prabhupada wrote this Bengali saying, which I never remembered, but the gist of it is, whatever you're doing in terms of yoga or your dharma, pious activity, it's all tested at death. The final, that's when it all counts. And so many places in the Bhagavatam, this is stressed. Right at the beginning of the second canto, I think we mentioned this last night, Shukadeva Goswami is speaking to Maharaj Pariksit. He's an ideal, he's about to die in 7 days, what to do? So he gives everything up, gives up the whole kingdom, sits down with simple clothes on the bank of the Ganges, and all kinds of, exalted people are there. Narada Muni is there, and many other great sages and saints. And of course, Shukadev comes and sits down and speaks to Bhagavatam. It's very dramatic, just as this is very dramatic, situation. And the first question that Pariksit asks is, what should one think about? What should one do? What should one hear and chant as death approaches? Because he's got a certain time frame, 7 days, So you can guess what the answer is. After 3 or 4 verses, I won't get into the whole lesson there about the foolishness of trying to counteract the dangers and the pain of material life with material soldiers. He calls them fallible soldiers. This famous verse, Deha Patra Kalatarade Shatma Sainyavshasatvapi. Asatsu means fallible, beginning with the body. I'm going to watch out how I'm going to take vitamins, I'm going to work out, and got plenty of health insurance, so I'll keep the body strong. That's the first line of defense. Then I have my relatives, beginning with my wife, children, expanded. And then, expanding out of that, the whole society, But it's all asatsu. They're fallible soldiers. They failed in the past, and they'll fail you too, because it all begins with the body, and the body is certainly fallible. Tesham pramatto nidanam. Because they're maddened by contact with the material energy and the effects of Maya, the illusory energy, it doesn't dawn on them that these soldiers have all they've been in the past for so many people, and then they've always failed. And your own grandfather has died, and your father, and you've seen. But because pramatto nidanam pashyan, although seeing that they've been destroyed previously, na pashyati, you don't see. So seeing is not just a physical act. As we learn, premanjana chudita bhakti vilochanena, if one can actually see Krishna within and without with the eyes of love, that's perfection, premanjana. So that depends on the purity of one's consciousness and so forth. So here, because of the illusion, it doesn't dawn on everyone is trying to protect himself, doesn't know any other way, and they fail every time they fail. So therefore, what to do? So he says, Tasmad, Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari Shrotavyak Kirtitavyascha Smartavyak Chechitabayam. For those who want fearlessness, Ichita Abhayam, at the time of death, here's what you have to do. He called them Bharata, the descendant of Bharat, just like we're reading Jad Bharat. So he has 4 different designations for the Supreme Lord. Sarvatma, the Super Soul, Bhagavan, Supreme Personality of God, Ishvara, Supreme Controller, and Hari, he who takes away all your suffering. So what should one do? Hear about him. That's the first thing. Shrotavyak, Kirtitav, and chant. Remember those 3 things. Hear, chant, and remember if you want to be fearless at the time of death. That's the solution. Because Krishna comes and take me. Yunmuna was right there. He said it was just like she got on the Vaikuntha airplane and went back. And when Jandanandana, I wasn't there, but he was very, transcendental to the whole thing. Amazing, So it's possible even for us. After all, these are Westerners. So this lesson is important, and he'll reiterate in the next verse, kind of summarize and go on with other things. And so this is, the first step is, I'm not the body, I'm eternal spirit soul. So what I do, what I think about, what I hear, what I do with all my senses, both knowledge acquiring and active, have to be in tune with my understanding of myself as a soul, as an eternal servant of Krishna. How can I become conscious of that at every moment? How can I deepen my understanding? And we've given so many instructions, what we should do and what we should not do. So this is laying the foundation for Arjun's eventual taking up his bow and fighting. Any questions on text 23? Yes, Prabhu. Wow.
I have a question about a brahmachari, if that ever happened to you, like live in the body stay within the ashram. And is there any special care? Maybe you have something that happened to you, and you Krishna consciousness
To myself,
experience?
you mean personally?
No, like
Did I experience a devotee leaving his body in the ashram?
Yeah.
No. No. Because, well, I mean, it didn't happen to me directly, but I was there in LA when Jayananda departed, the famous Jayananda. And of course, we knew it was coming, and it was he may have been staying in an apartment there. You know, I wasn't there by his side, but the devotees were all around. In other words, it's not so much the physical things that are going on. You know, is if you have devotees with you who can help you be Krishna conscious, that's all important. That's the most important thing. So that was certainly there for him, and that's a given. You know, if you're an ashramite, you know. I'll be there for you. Will you be there for me? We'll make a pact. No, but seriously, that's one of the things that is the great advantage of being amongst devotees and having your friends and being within the community, is that everyone knows that that's the most important thing, and it's not that it costs a lot of money. You know, you want to make the person comfortable, but you want to keep the sound going, and constant reminder of Krishna. Because there's so much going on with the body, you know, that can easily distract you. So, but I always come back to that verse in the Sadhu Sangashtaka. This is in the third canto, chapter 25, beginning text 20. And Kapila Deva is telling his mother, he's speaking to his mother, how important it is to transfer your attraction from the things of this world to sadhus. To devotees. And he describes the essential nature of devotee, very tolerant, very merciful, tatikshava karunika, the friend of all, suridak sarvadem. It kind of describes a book distributor. Any preacher who's concerned not only about his own Krishna consciousness, but he wants to give it to others. Jata shatra, but therefore because he really is not coveting anything in this world, he doesn't have any enemies. He doesn't feel enmity toward anyone, although others may feel enmity toward him, because we were discussing with Bhaktisiddhanta how he was preaching Lord Chaitanya's truth, that anyone from any station in life can become an exalted devotee, and therefore exalted Vaishnava and Brahman. This is a great challenge to the Brahmins, so they was a plot to kill him. There was even assassinate him. So, but he doesn't feel enmity. Anyway, these qualities are there. And if one is fortunate enough to get that association and take advantage of it by hearing and putting into practice the instructions, then one he describes the qualities of a sadhu, mayananyena bhavena bhaktim kurvanti yedvidham, that he is one-pointed devotee unto me, Kapila Deva's Krishna. And for the sake of me, he'll give up any activity that he's performing, and even if necessary, break familial ties if they're an impediment. We saw that with Prabhupada. Eventually he left his family because it was an impediment to his preaching and his Krishna consciousness. So then what? So then he describes the benefits, of being in that, of being a serious devotee. Manashya katam rishta. Manashya means, in this case, sound vibration that has taken shelter of me, that's related to me. Manashya katam rishta. This is how Prabhupada explained it. Or those who've taken shelter of me. Katam rishta. Rishta means very sweet and pleasing. In other words, Krishna kata, always absorbed. Shrinvanti katayanti, hearing and chanting. And because of that, the mind is absorbed in Krishna. And that comes the pertinence to this. Tapanti vividastapa naitan mankata chetasa. Therefore, the sufferings of this world, the tapa, threefold miseries, and all of the suffering that attends the approach to death, tapanti vividastapa doesn't bother them as much. Tapanti vividastapa naitan mankata chetasa. Because their mind is on me. Is it locked? Makes you... Hare Krishna. Come. Yeah. There's plenty of seats over here if you want to. Yeah. And we're on page 90, 91. So he says there, tapanti means suffering. Vividas tapan. the sufferings of this world, you don't feel them as much. Naitan, just like we have nainam. Why? Madgata cetasa. Because the mind is absorbed in me. And the mind is absorbed in Krishna, you can become practically unconscious of the bodily pains. How did Prahlad do it? Haridas Thakur, you know. So that's the best thing that can be done. As death approaches, become as Krishna conscious as possible. Yeah. Oh, we have another question. I thought that answered everything. Okay.
So, Prabhu, it's a beautiful verse that you have given with the four things. But Prabhu,
speak a little louder into them.
Yeah. So recently, I came to know that many of the senior, like some of the sannyasis in the movement also, like what examples you gave with Rajendranandan Prabhu or like Shamali Mataji. But we see some exalted devotees also like going through unnatural deaths.
Going through?
Unnatural deaths, like accident, unnatural deaths.
Oh, yes, that happens, yeah.
Yeah. So how do we see that? Like, like we know that they are very exalted devotees and they always seek shelter of Krishna. But you see that they are either passed away in accident or in fire accident or something like that.
Well, this is the point, is that real Krishna consciousness is meant to come to the point, as I've emphasized, it's there in the Bhagavatam, of constantly remembering Krishna, which is possible through the process that we've been given, depending on our application of it, right? We're always enjoying it, constantly chant Hare Krishna. If you can come to that point, then you're ready. This is, Prabhupada said, you have to be ready to die at any time. We don't know. You know, who knows what's going to happen in this crazy European situation, you know. I mean, I before I even heard, I was a total atheist when I grew up, you know, but I was constantly aware of the danger of nuclear war. It's the Cold War, you know, but we were thinking that we could get hot at any moment. The nuclear bombs could start flying. They're still out there. So what are we going to do? You know, we got 20 minutes before they come over. There's no way to stop them. Now what are you going to do? Everyone's going to be screaming, running, you know. What are we going to do? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. We really chant around seriously. No falling asleep. Where's our friend Saul? He's probably sleeping upstairs. No offense, Saul. He's probably working hard in the back. But the point is, that's the final exam. It may not come when you're 80 years old. It may come when you're 21 years old. So, I mean, we've had examples. I'll tell you a story Badri Maharaj tells. It's always got a funny twist to it too, you know. So he's on one of his many trips to India. You know, he's been at GBC since '87, so you figure it's coming up on 40 years, you know. And every time he's flying off to India, So sometimes you go the eastern route, sometimes you go the western route. So he's going western route over the Pacific. And he knew from experience that there's a, somewhat east of Japan, there's an area where turbulence is very likely. And this time it was really happy. He was chanting and reading, and there was a lady next to him who was kind of, you know, very aloof and wouldn't look at him because, you know, you're sitting with, you know. So she was doing her thing, he was doing his thing. And suddenly they hit a huge turbulence, you know, thing. Like the plane can like fall down and you're almost like weightless. That's why they tell you to keep those belts on even when it goes smoothing, because a pocket and then you can hit the ceiling and break your neck. Anyway, it was like that. So what did he do? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. What did she do? She freaked out, of course. You know, well, and her hair was getting undone, her hat came undone, you know, and the makeup was all, you know, crazy, and she was screaming. So, and he was just saying, well, look, this is it, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. There's other stories like this. So at the end of it all, when of course they, you know, smoothed out, she said, what were you doing? You know, could you please explain? You know, she was very interested. Because he was obviously under control. He wasn't freaking out, you know. And there have been other devotees like that who've been in airplanes, the likeliest place, you know, a lot of flying. So we have to see it as, and those who are going through it have to see it. That's the most important thing. Well, this is Krishna's decision. He's bringing me back. This is the test, you know. It's not a question of, okay, we see, well, he could have done so much more preaching. Yeah, but you don't know. It could be a disease. It could be an accident. It could be an assassination. You never know. And so that's all beyond our ability to know why and how Krishna's doing what he's doing. But the main thing is what we're doing in response. which is a Krishna conscious response, and that is call on Krishna. Please let me not forget you at this critical moment. You know. Now sometimes you have time. You're in a bed, and you're surrounded by devotees. That's all auspicious. You know, that's you can understand that. But it doesn't matter. You know, Shamali was 32 or 37, something like that. You know, and devotees have died in ripe old age. You know, but it's the time we have is like a split second compared to the time we've been in the material world. So the idea is, with knowledge, we should use every second. What is it? Avyata kalatvam is one of the 9 symptoms of sincere devotees. And one of them is not wasting any time. Because when you're wasting that time, that could be the time when things get crazy and you're not able to remember Krishna. So it's not, that's, yes, we saw, with Bhakti True Swami, no one expected it. And of course there was so much grief on the part of his devotees and many devotees all over the movement. But, his Krishna consciousness was so exalted, and that we're confident that he's with Prabhupada. So it's all up to us. Each individual, often the analogy is given to fly your own airplane. If one airplane gets in trouble, no other airplane can help them. So ultimately, we have to develop our relation with Krishna, remembrance of Krishna. So we should do that. All right, let's go on. Text 24, which reiterates some of this text 23. Bottom of page 91. Achedyo yam madayo yam. Akledyo shosha evacha. Nityat sarvagatak sthanur. Achaloyang sanatanaha. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. Purport. All these qualifications of the atomic soul definitely prove that the individual soul is eternally the atomic particle of the spirit whole, and he remains the same atom eternally without change. The theory of monism is very difficult to apply in this case, because the individual soul is never expected to become one homogeneously. After liberation from material contamination, what's going on here? After liberation from material contamination, the atomic soul may prefer to remain as a spiritual spark in the effulgent rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the intelligent souls enter into the spiritual planets to associate with the Personality of Godhead. The word sarvagata, all-pervading, is significant because there is no doubt that living entities are all over God's creation. They live on the land, in the water, in the air, within the earth, and even within fire. The belief that they are sterilized in fire is not acceptable, because it is clearly stated here that the soul cannot be burned by fire. Therefore, there is no doubt that there are living entities also in the sun planet with suitable bodies to live there. If the sun globe is uninhabited, then the word sarvagata, living everywhere, becomes meaningless. So I remember this pertinent here. It was many years ago. I think there's a very deep trench in the ocean nearby, up here, up north a little bit. Thousands and thousands of feet. And the scientists like to go down there and see what's going on and so forth. And there was a vent from an underwater volcano. You remember that? And it was super hot underneath the water. It was like 600 degrees or something. And so they were getting water from there, and they were surprised to see that there were living entities. There were little bacteria or something in there. That completely blew away the whole idea that they couldn't, live in that kind of heat. So the idea that only on the earth, have the conditions for life been, favorable, and therefore on Mars and Venus, what to speak of the moon, what to speak of the sun, there's no living entities, doesn't make any sense. When you have faith in these statements of Krishna, that especially sarvagata, that they go everywhere. It's not that each individual soul is all pervading. All pervading is, means that they, as explained in the translation here, they're present everywhere. They're present everywhere. What is that? It's unsolvable. It can mean either. Present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. Now, immovable is an interesting word. I've always wondered about that. Don't we go from body to body, from planet to planet, and ultimately back to God? We're moving all over the place. But in one sense, we don't move because we're spirit. And the unchanging asat of the material world is certainly going all over the place, including our body is constantly changing. But we ourselves are not actually moving any place. Time and space ultimately don't mean anything on the spiritual plane. There's no time, as it's explained in the Brahma Samhita. There's no change of time. It's ever present, right? And space, well, Krishna is all-pervading. He's present everywhere. He's here. He's in Goloka Vrindavan. Goloka eva nivasatekilatma bhuta. So it's hard to grasp that because we're so used to bodies moving through space and time, you know. But we're not the body. We're spirit. So that is very fascinating. Everlasting, present, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. So after liberation from material, the atomic soul may prefer to remain as a spiritual spark. So this keeps coming up because Prabhupada is doing battle with the Mayavadis, oftentimes in his books as you read, you know. Sometimes whole chapters, like chapter 7 of the Adi Lila, of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the impersonalists say that we have been cut off, separated from the Supreme Brahman. When we become realized, we'll merge back in. In other words, we're not everlastingly eternal individual souls. We're eternal, we're spirit, but we're artificially separate from the Supreme, and then when we attain perfection, we merge back into the Supreme. Now for Bhakta, this is what we call anathema, something that is just the most horrible, abhorrent thing. Kaival yang nadakayate. That for a devotee, this merging, kaivalya, oneness, is worse than going to hell. Because at least in hell, you've got your individuality, you can chant Hare Krishna. Maybe a little warm there, but at least you can Hare Krishna. And sometimes the situations here in this world are pretty hellish, right? What does a devotee do? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Nrsingadev, right? But if you think, well, you know, I'm ultimately no different than the Nrsingadev, why should I cry out to him? You know, then that's, in other words, it completely destroys bhakti. But for bhakti, which is the loving, eternal loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, there has to be three things. There has to be Bhagavan, there has to be the bhakta, the devotee, and the exchange of feelings. That's all disappeared when you merge. If you don't have any senses, you don't have any separate identity or form or any way, then there's no question of bhakti. And the devotees would rather stay in the material world. That's why Lord Chaitanya says, it says, Mama janmani janmani shvede bhavata bhakta hoita kitvahi. He says what he doesn't want. Nadanam, najanam, nasundadim, kavitam va jagadisha kamiye. Oh Jagadish, Lord of the universe, I don't want wealth. In this way he's saying, people who are working so hard to get to the heavenly planets, to enjoy wealth, they're foolish. Because you're still in the material world and ultimately you come back down again. So nadanam, no followers, I don't want followers. I don't want beautiful spouse. I don't want great material knowledge, kavitam. Mama janmani, when he says janmani, he says, I don't want liberation. Because with liberation, there's no janma, right? Then what do you want? Birth after birth, unmotivated devotion unto you. Unmotivated means no material motivation. It's not that you want something from Krishna, therefore you're worshipping him. All you want from Krishna is the opportunity to serve him for his pleasure. Because we're part and parcel of Krishna. And therefore, when Krishna feels pleasure, especially that we can give him some pleasure, that's our greatest pleasure. Much beyond any material pleasure. Material pleasure always has a beginning and an end because it's predicated on the senses. The senses are clearly limited. But the spirit soul isn't. So when the soul can do something that is in the realm of pleasing Krishna, glorifying Krishna, making him happy, then you feel a happiness that is unknown to the materialist. And that's not available if you're going to merge. No merging allowed. We want to keep that eternal identity. That's Sarup Siddhi, our original. What does mukti mean? This is in the Bhagavatam. In the second canto, I think 9th chapter, maybe 10th, there's a little table of contents of the Bhagavatam. And it gives the definition of the different subjects. And the definition of mukti is given as follows. Not merging, but mukti hitpa anyata rupam swarupena vavastati. Talking about rupa, when you talk about rupa, there's no merging. Rupa is your form. So what it says, hitpa anyata rupam, means giving up all these other forms, like the ones we're sitting in right now. This is not our Sarup. It's changing from day to day, moment to moment. Sarup doesn't change. So it means getting free from all of these changing forms, anyata, and swarupena, being situated in your actual Sarup Siddhi, your eternal form, and your personality, and your preference for serving Krishna in your own unique way. That's your Sarup. It doesn't, and you'll be happy in that identity forever. Serving Krishna in a variety of ways. Every day is new, every moment is new, ever fresh. It's never boring. Whereas material life, becomes boring after a while. You get satiated. All right. Any questions on this particular verse?
Quick question, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Okay, go ahead, Arjun.
Thank you for that. I remember an old devotional song. Even that guy in that song says, "I need a gift of bhakti."
I need a gift of bhakti.
Yeah, I think some god appeared. He was worshipping a lot. He used to, like a very simple guy, worshipped a lot under a tree, and God appeared and he said, "What do you want? What's your desire?" He said, "I want just gift of bhakti." That's so, yeah. And one question, Prabhu, just one little bit confusion maybe there. In India, like, when we die, the body dies, they burn the body because we understand, the soul left, what we're going to do with the, with the body, right?
Yeah.
But I have a lot of Christian friends also. They have some similar idea. They say Holy Ghost in Christianity.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Muslims say Allah, and, like different cultures have different philosophies.
Right.
But all of them, other than us, they burn the body.
No, the Christians
not burn. They bury the body. Sorry, bad English. They bury the body, and as they believe in this idea that one day the person is gonna come alive.
Resurrection.
Right? So I wanted to understand why it's like. What's their belief? Cause you grew up in a different culture, so you might get a good answer on that.
All I can, it's a sign of deep identification with the bodily concept of life. Just like one, I'm going to call it a sect. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get. They believe that you not only you unite with your old uncle and your grandma and everything. In other words. They're also there at the right hand of God, and when you resurrect, Does that make any sense? I mean, if you actually think about it, isn't there kind of a limit to how much, juice you can get out of relationship? It's a sign of not having a mature understanding of who we really are. That's why this concept that we just had a few verses ago, Vasangsi Jirnani Yata Vihaya, that when we die, it's like taking off these old coats, right? And putting on a new set of clothes. So where's the lamentation for that? Lament an old if you get rid of your old dhoti, your old jacket or something, But because we are identifying ourselves with that jacket, with those clothes, then it becomes a big tragedy. So therefore, the way that we idealize, our perfection in religion, is that we'll have our ideal body and we'll be related to those who we loved before, But the problem is that that's all part of the illusion. Is that we're probably right at the beginning of the second canto. It's such a wonderful chapter. I encourage you all to read it, chapter 1. He talks about how material relationships are just like bubbles meeting in a foam, like one of these waves that come in. You can go out there and you can easily understand it. They come together and then they separate. It's like momentary, and never to be seen again, and then they dissolve. So that's what the body is. We're coming together. I mean, I look back on my long life. I knew people, I can remember relationships. Sometimes they were very meaningful. You know, but then time passed and it's gone. And where is it now? It's just a faint memory. It doesn't have any pull on my heart or anything. So the things that we go through in lifetime, in a material life, very attracted to this, very attached to this, and then eventually it breaks up, and it's such a traumatic experience. We go to a therapist and says, okay, and then you get healed up, you know. It's just it's just a result of a huge misunderstanding. That's what Krishna is teaching Arjuna now. Arjuna's whole argument against fighting was based on a huge misunderstanding. He was placing all of his faith, all of his feeling in these relationships that he had with his teacher and his friends and his relatives. Now, it's not that they're real, but if you let that be your all in all, then you're missing out on what human life is all about. And in Arjuna's case, he's going to be failing in the most important test of his life, that he's fighting this battle that's been building up, that's going to be for the fate of the earth. Is it going to be run by the demons, or is it going to be run by Dharma in the person of Yudhishthira? So it was the key. And most importantly, Krishna wanted it. This was Krishna's plan, that our Dharma had become prominent, and he was working, and he had arranged all this to Dharma to be reinstated in the form of Yudhishthira, then in the person of Parikshit. Then Kali Yuga comes, and he comes back as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and here we are. But he's always trying to help. And so it's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding. And from that one misunderstanding, it can completely block your progress to perfection, which is to transcend entirely the bodily concept of life. Identify with the spirit and learn how to use this very body, the hands, the legs, the senses, in connecting to Krishna, in serving Krishna. And then we see that, and now of course it's interesting that the great souls, like Srila Prabhupada and other acharyas, even sannyasis, they don't get burned, because the body is understood to be spiritual, so it's buried and becomes samadhi tomb, people visit, But to think that someday we'll come out of the grave and rejoin us, I'd rather not. Thank you. Go ahead.
I just have a reflection. I remember when I was working, I would see a lot of people leave their body, and some of them would leave their body alone. Their family wouldn't come to visit them. And so I was just thinking about how important Krishna consciousness is, and the association of devotees.
Yeah.
Before you leave your body, like we were talking about, having a devotees, near you chanting, and so you can remember Krishna is very key.
Yeah, it's a very important service. I have had the good fortune of being asked to chant Hare Krishna for at least a dozen devotees, over the years. I remember it was 20 years, almost to the day, because it was Gaur Purnima, when one devotee named Ojasvi left his body. He was the one who painted that that box that we put the money into, handi, and he did a lot of other services. He made a chakra, which we haven't seen, but it still exists. Unfortunately, it wasn't plated properly, but if we get it up there, you'll see. And anyway, he did a lot of service for the for the museum in L.A. And the time came, and he wanted me to chant. It was just literally Gaur Purnima, and so I went over there. His family is there, and he left his body. So it's and of course Radhanath Das was another one. You heard about him. He's legendary, in a wheelchair, going out every day to the tribute books. So yeah, it's definitely quite an experience to see that, and to see the way in which devotees leave their bodies in Krishna consciousness, as a comparison to, as you've seen and I've seen in the hospital. It's a real thing. Okay, we're almost out of time. I think we'll leave the next one for tomorrow, and I'll give you a couple of poems. Sureshwar. He's waiting. So, how to spend our days so that we're not burned by Kali Yuga. This is from the Padyavali. Yeah. Aho aho bir nakale viduyate sudha sudhara marodam pade pade. Dine dine chandana chandra shitalam yasho yashoda tanayasya giyate. Because at every step they drink a flood of wondrous nectar sweet. Let me start that again. Because at every step they drink a flood of wondrous nectar sweet, whose cooling power sandal paste enhanced with camphor can't defeat. They feel as if the raging blaze of Kali's days had ne'er begun. How blessed are they who fill their days with praise of Shri Yashoda's son. And now a real short one, Queen Kunti's prayers, a mortal prayer. Tvayame nannibhishaya motir madapate sakrit ratamun mahataradha gange bhaugamadhanvati. O Madhava, please ever fill my mind with thoughts of thee, not any other kind. As Ganges' torrent flows into the sea, let all my love flow constantly to thee. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.